been thunderstruck. Yeah, I know that's not our intro song, but come on, it's opening day, and I'm not thinking about today's White Sox because they're kind of useless. But I've got my World Series jersey on, John Darlin. I'm thinking back to 2005. I've got thunderstruck going through my veins, and I'm thinking baseball, even though I'm not really thinking White Sox in 2025. So, and you'll notice, by the way, one of our political experts isn't here. Chris was given the week off from SFR. He's also a huge Sox fan, but he's one that's crazy enough to actually be at the ballpark today to watch our White Sox lose. So we let Chris off the hook. Because Chris isn't here for the first time ever, I'm going to introduce our political experts from Core first. They're always last. But just to drive Chris crazy, I'm going to introduce Michael first, just because that will drive Chris nuts. So Michael Butler is with us, Core's political expert. And ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you that Michael will never add unauthorized people to his group chats. You can trust him. He's good. What's up, Michael?
That's true. Doing good. How are you?
Good. Good to have you, buddy. We also have with us four experts. With Chris not here, we were able to sneak in another expert, which is pretty cool. We're going to have an awesome episode. Let me start with the Senator Erica Harris. She's a senator for the 56th district. She's been on with us before. She's also an entrepreneur, a small business owner, and previously served on the Madison County Board. The Senate's not in Springfield this week, so we're really glad to have Erica with us.
Thanks for having me.
Considering you're one of the hardest working people out there, it's awesome we can sneak this in there and get your expert thoughts on things. So glad to have you. We also have with us Christina Clausen. She's the chairman of the Will County Republican Central Committee. She's also a business owner, so we've got some pretty good representation here from the business sector in Illinois. Christina, what's going on?
Not much. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. Is that a leather jacket you got on? I love that. That looks awesome.
It is. It is.
Nice. I like it. All right, we've got next with us Matt. Just say your last name for me so I don't screw it up.
Rauschert. You wouldn't be the only one, so whatever you say works.
I'd rather not say it wrong and just let you say it.
All right.
But glad to have you with us. First time on the podcast. You're the chairman of the Make Illinois Great Again Pact. You're also the campaign chairman for Dylan Vansel, who's running in the 17th congressional district. And the trend continues. You're a manufacturer and a business owner. So yet again, we've got some good representation from that side of our state. What's going on, Matt?
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
The people who actually create jobs and create wealth and, try to keep the state moving ahead while politicians in Springfield, present company excluded, make that harder. We also have with us Philippe Melin. He's the executive director of the Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse, another organization fighting to improve our business climate in this state. Philippe, glad you're with us. You are muted, my friend.
Great to be here, Collin. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right, well, let's just jump right into it because we have a longer agenda than usual because there's a lot going on. Anybody who's been paying attention knows that next Tuesday, as you're watching this on Friday or over the weekend, Tuesday is the end of the local elections. People have already been voting by mail. They've been voting in person. And then you have in-person election day coming up on Tuesday. So this is a bit of a catch-all topic just for people to talk about maybe some of those local races you're keeping an eye on. I know there's some hot races all throughout the state. There's controversies in Orland Park for the fire department board. And then, of course, for mayor and trustee. There's lots of controversies in the Naperville races for city council. Of course, we've talked about Aurora and Waukegan. I think Michael Collins and some of these other areas that have some tight races for mayor or other seats. So any races you guys are looking at that you want to talk about here in the podcast, jump right in.
I'm excited to see what's going to go on in Bloomington. You've got Dan Brady, obviously ran a statewide race. I'm hoping to see him squeak it out. As with most of these mayoral races, it's nonpartisan, but I'm hopeful that he'll slide in there because I think it'd be good for the party. And then I've got a bunch of little races by us.
There's a far left guy in that race who's working with the Democratic Party, and they're going hard after Dan Brady.
Yeah, in my region, this is the most I've seen April 1st elections get contentious. For Galesburg, for example, we had 3,347 last time vote total in the consolidated election. We've already had 1,000 plus vote early.
Wow.
So who knows what's going to happen down here? But I'm hoping that we can offset the left's energy on April 1st.
Yeah, I mean, they're spending tons of money. I know just for instance, in that Aurora race, Democrats have already spent well over $100,000 on that race. I mean, it's unbelievable how much they're spending at the local level to elect these far left progressives.
Well, and we've seen the Illinois Democrat Party get involved in some of the ones downstate as well, especially in the Metro East. I got pictures of mail that was texted to me I guess at the beginning of this week, where the Illinois Democratic Party had endorsed candidates and encouraged, Democrat voters to get out and support these individuals. But we're hearing reports and seeing things firsthand across the state of just wild behavior in these municipals. It's kind of interesting. I don't know what's in the water this year, but it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, they always say these local races are the ones that just get the craziest because they tend to be the most personal. But some of the stories this year, there's some things that we just haven't been able to share on air. Maybe we'll do an episode after April 1st where we just all share stories of what we heard of these local races because it's gotten bonk nuts crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
since we've been beating a lot of the Democrats here in the Metro East and St. Clair and Madison County, so they have this like new tactic where they like identify as elected officials and they like show up at the groundbreaking and like use the shovel after the official picture is taken. And it's like, are you guys not like embarrassing yourself? Latoya did it for 2 years straight. We have some Democrats running for trustee in Caseyville. They just did it like 2 days ago. Like they have their own like make-believe groundbreaking.
Yeah, and just for those who maybe aren't following what Michael's saying, literally they had a groundbreaking where the mayor and the trustees were there, the business leaders. It's a big deal when a new business opens up, even in a state like Illinois where, we tend to hate businesses. And then these candidates showed up right after that to then do their own fake groundbreaking in that exact same spot and do a photo shoot and like pretend like they were part of it. Like that's literally what happened. It's just, I got to tell you, some of these people are just shameless.
Oh yeah.
So in Homer Glen, we had one of the only primaries in Will County, and it was a forced primary. It was coordinated by the other side. They took over our PCs, took over our Homer Township Republicans to avoid a caucus, and they were endorsed by Democrats, and over 800 Democrats came out to vote and knocked out the incumbents. So
yeah, I saw some of the numbers that were being put out early. We want to do a deep dive into that race and really get it. I know, obviously, Steve's really looking into that too. They will do anything to win. I mean, we've talked about this, that Democrats will do whatever it takes to win.
Republicans will too, apparently. They colluded with the other side, defaming, the incumbents and attacking and joining forces with them. It was disheartening.
Yeah, and I don't know where you stand. I know you guys have a tiny portion of Orland Park, but I know the Democrats came out with mail pieces in Orland Park endorsing their preferred candidates, including getting involved in what is essentially a Republican on Republican race.
Yeah.
Though at this point, since Jim Dodge is paling with the Democrats, I don't know if we can officially call him a Republican anymore. But their Democrats are involved there. They're involved in Naperville, where they're running a whole slate of candidates, and Bill Foster and Lauren Underwood are showing up to events and donating lots of money. It's a concerted effort here. It's not just Pritzker. It's all the Democrats throughout the state are actively involved in school board races and municipal races. I know Rockford is a whole bunch of Democrats that are active there. We're seeing it everywhere.
Yes.
We're seeing a lot of Doge protests going on where 200, 300 Democrats will go out and they'll hold up signs about Trump and they'll use that as a way to drive out early voting. Are you guys seeing protests? Because for us, it's abnormal.
Yes.
These are towns of 10 to 15,000 people, so we've never seen this before. But are you guys seeing that?
Yes.
There was a small one in Edwardsville. Maybe about a dozen people showed up to protest Elon Musk. It was kind of sad, but we haven't had a lot of that.
They're doing them about once a week here. They're growing a little bit in number, but it doesn't seem to be a massive turnout.
They just hate government efficiency. They just can't stand it.
Yeah.
Michael, what was the maybe this is one of your clowns, so forgive me, but what was the thing you posted on our internal Discord about? Was it like 700 grand in Illinois being spent out of our budget? Something that an Illinois Doge maybe could pick up?
Oh yeah, like it was like the Black Research Project, and it's this group out of Chicago, African American women, and they're taking their research to the streets. And they issued multiple press releases in support of Kim Foxx, but they're getting $700,000 a year from the state of Illinois since like 2022, like consecutive. Just keep renewing it. It's in this year's budget that Pritzker rolled out as well. So
and they use these, just like the bills, they like use this great language that make it seem great, but then you're like, okay, so now what do you do? And you dig into it, and it's like, well, we put out press releases defending J.B. Pritzker and Kim Foxx and all the far left Democrats. It's like, okay, so why are our tax dollars going towards this then? Yeah. All right, well, let's use this as our transition. We got to talk about this because there's an Illinois tie to the civil war that is growing within the Democratic Party. It seems like J.B. Pritzker and others are fostering this civil war, and we can talk about that. But the tie to Illinois is this. In the 9th Congressional District, there is a challenger for the first time in a long time to Jan Schakowsky. And I kid you not when I say this person is challenging Schakowsky on her left. And if you don't live near Schakowsky or don't know her at all, that statement may not seem crazy. But Philippe, I know you, like me, live near this district. I never thought I would ever say those words, that somebody is challenging her from her left. This individual's name is Kat. I'm going to do this. I got this. Kat Abogazale. I think I got it. Abogazale. I think I did it. She's challenging. She's a progressive social media personality. She's got 200,000 followers on TikTok. She likes throwing bombs, as you see in some of her videos, and taking on the far right and blah, blah, blah. She's going after Jan Schakowsky, and this really shows that there's a civil war brewing in the Democratic Party. I've had a number of conversations the last few weeks about this specific topic, that they see Democrats growing into their own version of the Tea Party here, where they just want to fight, want to yell, want to scream. And I have disagreements that that's actually like the Tea Party, but we can talk about it. But either way, maybe Philippe, I'll have you go first here. I mean, just how crazy is it that we live in a world where Jan Schakowsky isn't liberal enough or progressive enough for the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody more left than Jan Schakowsky in the Congress. So it's when you say she's coming from the left, it's something different, right? You're alluding to that. It's not something that's like, oh, she's farther left. It's something. It's a vibe shift. I think what it is that Jan Schakowsky is two things. One is Jan Schakowsky's been there a long time, and she's more established. She's part of what you would call maybe a Democratic establishment. She's on the far left of the Democratic establishment, but she is there. She's been running around Washington forever, and I just think what we were seeing in the meta is that the Democratic establishment is dying, like the Republican establishment kind of died a few years ago, and you're going to start to see challenges coming from this new kind of rebirth of what the left is, and it's going to look different. It's going to feel different. So that's one thing that I think is different, is that it's just more of like who's in charge, not so much an ideological different, with one exception. If you looked at that video that woman did, her announcement video, behind her, she could see her little checkered scarf thing that she's hanging up, and that's a pretty strong policy statement right there, just on the visual. And obviously Jan Schakowsky she's reformed, but she's Jewish, and she's going to have more ties with the Reformed Jewish community. Whereas I think this new challenger is going to be trying to challenge her on that issue.
And it wasn't accidental. I mean, if you watch the video, her keffiyeh is like right there. It's not an accident.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I was having a conversation about this with a friend of mine about this district, and the assumption is that Schakowsky's district is overwhelmingly Jewish. We looked at the numbers. It's 6 to 7% Jewish and about 4 to 5% Arab or Muslim. This is not an overwhelmingly Jewish district, even though everybody just sort of assumes that it is. And so you're right. It's going to be their major policy difference. But as we've seen over and over again, the people in the Democratic Party who disagree on sort of that fight, the fight between Palestine, Israel, or sort of the anti-Israel vibes that are pretty prevalent in today's progressive movement. It's not actually people who are that nationality or that religion. It's just tends to be just liberal white people who are having this fight, and that's what Schakowsky's district is. It is just liberal suburban white people who are fighting over something they have no ties to whatsoever.
She hasn't been this scared since Joel Pollak walked across the 9th Congressional District.
God, I forget the Joel Pollak days. Man. I think it makes both of us old.
Yeah.
Well,
but I think go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, and I know we talked about it maybe a couple of weeks ago, but I feel like it didn't really get a lot of media coverage where, we've seen these clips of like, more liberal constituents going to town halls that Republican congressmen are having and, trying to stir the pot and push back. But we've seen that at Democrat representatives town halls as well, where you have these more liberal activists showing up and saying the Democrat incumbents aren't doing enough, and then that the Republican incumbents are, sold out to Donald Trump, right? So they've got this weird dynamic where you have people that are voting straight Democrat that are mad at the Republicans because of Trump and Elon, but they're also mad at the Democrats because they feel like they're not doing enough to push back against the Trump administration. So, I mean, you see it with Schumer too. I mean, all the heat and flack that he's been taking.
Well, I think that's the point here, right? I mean, yeah, aisle nine is our excuse to talk about this, but this is this is a big problem with Democrats, and I think we see it in Illinois. I mean, we've talked about for the 2 years we've been doing this podcast, we've been talking about how far left Democrats in Illinois have gone. I mean, I know Erica sees it every day down in Springfield. We see it every day in the politics where the Democrats of old, where maybe some of them or most of them tended to lean a little bit more towards the middle. That's gone. There are very few centrist Democrats left, very few moderate Democrats left. There's the far left progressives have ownership of this party in the state, and you're seeing it. And so that's that civil war we're seeing. And Phil was completely right that it's not necessarily over policy in some cases. It's about personality and tactics. Pritzker keeps going out. He was just in California last week where he was saying we got to fight, 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 and punch Trump in the face. And it's this rhetoric, this frankly violent rhetoric. And we saw what happened during the first Trump term with the violent rhetoric. It led to riots and protests on the streets. It led to businesses burning and people being hurt and killed. And that's where this rhetoric will take us if the left has what they want. And so I've had people say, is this the left's Tea Party? I mean, yeah, we went out in the street and waved signs and honked cars, but we weren't burning small businesses. We weren't showing up at town halls screaming people down and letting them speak. If this is the left's town hall or the left's Tea Party, it's a very different version of a Tea Party.
Collin, I think we ought to keep an eye on Brad Schneider in the 10th district too. That's I live in the 10th district. He is swerved far left. The rhetoric he's putting out is totally different than the Brad Schneider that we've seen in previous years. And there's some pretty talented politicians on the Democratic side in the 10th congressional district who I keep keeping an eye out to see if maybe some of them are going to take the jump. And I wouldn't be 100% surprised that there might be an opening against a guy like Brad Schneider from a really talented politician like
Well, I think that's what we got to watch for, right? I mean, in this I don't know, this era, use a Taylor Swift phrase, but in this era for the Democratic Party, they don't know which direction to go. But what they do know is they're not happy, and they're going to turn their guns inward, much like we Republicans tend to do. I think that's where the Democrats are right now. Is it's going to be their own version of a circular firing squad, and we got to be ready because if they primary each other in districts, if Brad Schneider gets knocked out in the 10th district in a primary by somebody further left, suddenly IL10 is a lot closer to being in play than it has been in a very long time, and that's just one district. What happens in all these other districts? So, yeah, I mean, this definitely creates opportunities for us if we're smart enough to take advantage.
Yeah, I don't think the Tea Party comparison is accurate because it's really any time in politics you have a name that's the centerpiece of a party, you pull that name out, there's always going to be a power vacuum. There's no cohesive voice, kind of from the top down. They definitely don't. I don't see a bench on the left at the national level. So I think it's probably going to be free for all until somebody really steps up as their next inheritor of that title at the top.
Yeah, Bernie and AOC are trying to grab onto it at the national level. Obviously, Pritzker's trying. He's trying to contrast himself with Newsom and some of these others who aren't fighters like he is. Like, clearly, you can tell, you're watching it. He's creating that brand and he's finding his lane. The problem is, I mean, how much of your soul are you going to sell to try to run for president? That's my question for Pritzker, because it's not just going far, far left as a progressive on issues. It's also, I mean, with this rhetoric that is going to incite violence. I mean, he's talking about how, cuts to government programs are going to kill people and Trump is murdering people. And it's just, let's fight on the streets. I want street fighters. I don't want people who aren't willing to fight, and let's burn things down and smash up Teslas. And where logically does this go? I mean, it doesn't go somewhere without something on fire, without somebody being hurt. Is Pritzker willing to do that just to fulfill his national ambitions? I mean, I know the answer, but it's sad to say that answer is yes. A couple other of these fractures that we're seeing. First on IL9, I find this kind of funny. So already you see the hypocrisy of this candidate. So Abigail Zale was talking about in her announcement that she would never do spam texts. And then literally the day after she did, or the same day, I think, she put out a spam text trying to raise money. So these people they will say anything and then do whatever they want. And so it looks like she's just another progressive politician who will say whatever it takes to get elected, but not actually follow the rules she puts in place for everybody else.
Also, I saw she made some comment in there too, where she was saying that, she's not going to spend all this money on, TV ads and mail and things like that, that she wants to, donate food to the needy and all of this stuff with her campaign contributions. And it's like, well, first off, that probably isn't legal, right? To be like buying constituents like things with your campaign contributions.
I mean, Willie
But
Wilson thinks it's okay, but I think for the rest of us, there may be an issue.
well, it's different when you get to the federal level too, compared to, state politics. But no, I mean it's silly. It's silly. She's
Yeah.
not gonna do that. She's gonna be running TV ads and sending mail with every dollar that she can find.
Yeah.
For sure.
Two other things I think that are worth pointing out before we go to our next topic. So, number one is interesting to see that the Chicago Federation of Labor, Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, Personal PAC, Sierra Club all came out with what I haven't seen in a long time, a statement attacking Dick Durbin for backing the Republican extension of the government spending and keeping the lights on. I haven't seen that where they actually attacked their own. And then we see the Teamsters coming out attacking J.B. Pritzker because he vetoed a bill that they really wanted, House Bill 2547, the Illinois Warehouse Worker Protection Act. And they came after pretty harshly, came after J.B. Pritzker. And Pritzker went right back at him, which, by the way, I think was a pretty big mistake. But I think also an indicator that he just doesn't care about Illinois anymore. He just cares about getting national press. Because for Pritzker to publicly, his spokesperson to publicly came out and call this union a group that's in favor of Donald Trump's anti-worker agenda. They're aligned with Bruce Rauner. They don't like working families. Like full on just attacked this group of Teamsters. I don't think J.B. Pritzker does that if he's running for re-election. But either way, you're seeing these splits really start to grow in the Democratic Party, and it's only March. All right, let's go to our next topic. So our friend Patrick Finkson at the Illinois ran another story about how Illinois Republicans may be screwed in 2026. He cited a number of Republican insiders. I was not one of them. He probably didn't want to talk to me because he knows I'm annoyingly optimistic sometimes, and Finkson doesn't like that. So I'm not quoted anywhere in this, but there's a number of operatives who are, basically with the general idea that Republicans are screwed in 2026, that it being a off year, we're going to have trouble winning, that there's some things that Trump and Elon Musk have done that won't play super favorably in the suburbs, that we don't have much of an infrastructure, which sadly still remains true, that we're not great at fundraising, which is, sadly true. They've tied all these dots together, connected all these dots to say Republicans are screwed next November. Essentially, don't even waste your time, which I would imagine some of you are certainly not going to agree with. So what are you guys thinking about where we stand for 2026?
I think you got to have, high hopes and low expectations, right? That's what gets you through the day. But I mean, I think there's always opportunities. It's just you have to be smart enough to, identify where those opportunities are and make sure that you're allocating your resources properly. When in 2020 in the Metro East, we flipped two state rep districts, Amy Alec and David Freeze. In 2022, we flipped a state rep, Kevin Schmidt's district, Erica Harris's district, right? So obviously we had headwinds those cycles as well. It was a similar dynamic. Trump was running for re-election in 2022. We had headwinds because of, Roe versus Wade and, the impact that had on the electorate. But we just kept our, get foot on the pedal and just talk to voters and let's get this done. So I think you just got to stay focused. Tune out some of that noise. I mean, there's always going to be people out there saying that all hope is lost. There's no path. Like we all suck. Like you're always going to hear that, but you can't let it hold you back from knocking doors and raising money and all the things that we are, expected to do.
I'll tag on to that. Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we just have to continue to keep that message simple. We are the party that has solutions. We want to lower taxes. We want less regulations. We want more job opportunities. As Michael said, we are doing that down here in the Metro East, and I think voters are responding to that. Pre-2015, our Madison County area was Democrat board, Democrat countywide electeds. That has completely changed now. And I think that is a direct result of Republicans saying this is not okay. We have good policies and we're going to meet people at the door and meet people where they are. And it's an easy sell because it's common sense and it makes for a better life. It is what people are asking for, right? Lower cost of living, safe places to live, opportunities for their kids. So it's really not a hard sell. We just need to make sure that we're in our communities not just in our little political realm, but in our communities, talking to people who want to stay in Illinois and have a desire to be here. And that we're continuing to just say, this is the message and this is what we stand for. And I think we've done that down here in the Metro East. And we are a very like purplish district, and people aren't necessarily just voting straight party lines, but if they hear what the message is and know the people behind that, and trust their integrity, that they are willing to do hard work to get that done, I think we are seeing results. It's clearly harder in really big races to be able to make that happen, and obviously money is always going to be a little bit of an issue, where historically we have been at a bit of a disadvantage just party wise. But if we just continue sending that message, and people just want to live their lives and trust that people that they are sending to represent them are making good decisions for them.
Well, and you talk about a blueprint for success. I mean, you find a good candidate who's everywhere in their district, focuses on local issues instead of national issues, builds relationships, and then shocks everybody. I mean, Erica, you did that. I know Kevin Schmidt, we've held up as an example of that, where 2 cycles in a row now, everyone said Kevin's toast, and Kevin pulled it off. You're going to do that again this election. I know Kevin's going to do that again this election. I mean, there's a recipe for success there, right? Finding good candidates who have great relationships in the community, who focus on local issues and making people's lives better. It's not an overly complicated formula, right?
I think with the right candidates, money is always going to be an issue. I think that the donors they're done seeing the losses. They're not going to give their hard-earned money to losses. And but if you're working your communities, you're walking, you're spreading the word. Even Democrats are looking at these issues like the boys being, boy in a girl's locker room, and these girls being forced to change in front of, the boy. That's a hot ticket item that normal Democrats don't like. They don't agree with it. They are going so hard left. I mean, we're trying to legalize prostitution and outlaw homeschooling. That's where we're at, and that's Democrats. So I think people are starting to see that it's starting to get a little crazy, and it gets crazier and crazier, I feel like, every single year. So
well, Christina, you're 100% right. I mean, it's as Illinois Democrats, let alone national Democrats, but we're in Illinois here. As Illinois Democrats get so much more progressive. I mean, it doesn't matter, what your electorate may look like, going to the polls. If even Democrats say, man, this is kind of nuts, you got a problem. I mean, we see a lot of candidates, if they're able to get those crossover votes and appeal not just to independent voters, but also even those soft Democrats, by saying, hey, listen, you want an adult in the room. You want somebody who's actually going to make your life better, instead of focusing on these ridiculous far left issues, the pro-criminal agenda down in Springfield, the raising your taxes, raising your health care costs, your health insurance costs, your utility costs, your energy costs. I mean, over and over again, that's what Democrats are doing in this state, on both fiscal issues and social issues. And I think there's a lane here, but we're going to need good communicators to be able to make that happen, which means between now and when petitions start getting passed in August, we got to go out there and find good candidates. I know some have announced. I know, Matt, I'm sure you'll say your guy there in aisle 17 is one of those good ones, and that's great. We need a lot more of them. We need them all across the state, people who are good communicators, who can show how the left is crazy and actually the Republicans are mainstream in this state.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and
I
go
find
after the youth. We need to start going after this new generation of voters. They think the same way we think. They were brought up during COVID. They went through COVID. They didn't like being locked down and not being able to graduate and having to wear a mask. They're angry. I'm talking to a lot of young people, and they're wanting to get involved. So getting them out to vote is a big deal. Just getting people out to vote is a big deal. If we could just get everybody to vote, we could really win. So that's the problem. People stay home.
I find myself on the edge of my seat, curious as to what our top of the ticket will look like, because I think that will drive so much of the rhetoric. But I do find myself very optimistic about the state Senate in particular. Like, I'm looking at Mike Halpin in aisle 36, and there's some others lingering out there. I think 2 or 3 good ones. The House, I'm also optimistic, but I think we can do some down ballot pickups, but I wish we had more of a conversation about that being the focus. Because even if we lose the top of the ballot, if we can get ourselves out of the super minority, that's when we start to have a say in these maps. That's when we start to have a say in some governance. It gives Senator Harris here the opportunity to go up and actually have a voice on the floor, and then we can really push a message. So I worry that we're going to put all of our chips into a top of the ticket basket and get, overly committed. Not that we shouldn't push as hard as we can to win Senate and governor, right? But it's just, I think that's kind of the lingering thing that will give us so much of a better understanding of what the field will look like.
Well, that's the thing. By the end of 2030, we have to have the governor's mansion and be out of the superminority in the House and Senate if we're going to have a 50% shot at the next maps. So I think people tend to forget that, oh, if we just get the governor's mansion, we'll be fine. It's like, no, that's only half the equation here. We got to start to crawl out of the superminority, and we only have 3 elections to do it. And so I think, Matt, it's a very solid point of, yes, we do need 7 good statewide candidates for this election, but we also need to make sure we've got solid candidates in these Senate seats and in these House seats, because there are going to be opportunities. Again, when we see it, when you're able to localize a race, we're able to win and surprise people in some of these districts, these local House districts, these Senate districts. It's 100% possible, but it starts with getting the right candidates in place, and the clock's ticking on that. That's petitions start being passed in what, 5 months?
Yeah, it's soon. It's August. Something I'd add to that too is we've written off a lot of districts as not winnable as a party, I think, and we don't do any candidate recruitment there. We don't raise money for these districts, but we really need to start spending money in districts where it might look like it's D15, but if we only have 3 cycles, we have to play on the ground every cycle. Even though it's really hard to invest money in a race where you think, it's low probability, I think we have to invest in, like there's a Rockford State Senate seat, looks very left wing, but, we've never given it a good shot. Maybe we move just 800 votes in that cycle, but then the next cycle we can do 1,600. It starts to add up. So
yeah, and that goes up ticket, right? I mean, you get 800 more votes out of a state Senate district. Ideally, you're keeping most of those all the way up and down the ticket for the rest of your candidates, and maybe that helps us pick up a county board seat in Winnebago County, and maybe that helps us, come closer to a statewide win. I mean, again, we need to think bigger picture as a party. We tend to not do that, but we got to lock arm in arm here and help up and down the ticket, make sure we find some successes.
Yeah, I just think don't write yourself off. You've got to stay focused, put in the work. Like, we're over 500 days from the next election. I mean, we got a ways out. We got a ways to go, and dynamics change. Elected officials get DUIs and speeding tickets and beat their wives and all sorts of things. And allegedly in a race that's not in play today, maybe in play in 8 months.
Yeah, careful, Butler. You'll be added to the lawsuit if you're not careful. But you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the thing. Matt Hansen is in a district that on paper people didn't think was winnable, but once you add his DUI and some of his other problems, including him just not being a great candidate, suddenly his district was playable, but we didn't have a candidate. We just had to walk away from that race. Joyce Mason there's a lot of people in her district in northern Lake County who are super frustrated with her because she doesn't show up. She doesn't do anything. They spent a good amount of money, the Democrats did, to support her when she had not really a real opponent. As much as Jim's a super nice dude, she didn't really have a real opponent, but clearly the Democrats were worried about it because she doesn't show up. She's not there in the district. She's not super well liked, even by Democrats in that district. There are going to be opportunities, and you just don't know what's going to happen with the cycle. Everyone who says, hey, listen, the off year is going to be bad for Republicans, you don't know that. This is not a normal presidential cycle, because this is not, they always say the second term of a president, their midterm is horrible for their party, but this isn't a normal second term for Trump. He was off for one and then back on for one. Since Grover Cleveland, we haven't had this. So we don't know what 2026 is going to look like because we haven't been through this before. It's brand new for all of us. And so to write it off and to already be Eeyore in March of 2025, I don't love the look that gives. And I'm not attacking Thinkson because it's not his job to be a cheerleader for the party. Rhonda Belford did that great in his piece. But I think for those Republican operatives that are already sort of, covering their butts saying, oh, well, we're going to lose, but it's not our fault. Like, come on, let's go out on the battlefield and fight. And if we lose, fine, we lose. But let's get out there and fight and put in our best effort, because we got to at least try in this state. You can't just give up if you live here.
Yeah, if you have that mentality, you probably will lose if you're an operative and you're already thrown in the towel.
Yeah, I mean, listen, do we need good candidates? Yes. I mean, I'm looking at the governor's field you mentioned, Matt, since you just spoke. I mean, we could briefly talk about that. I mean, we've got one announced candidate in Mendrick, DuPage County Sheriff. This week in the last week, we saw a couple things pop up. Gary Rabine, who's now a Florida resident, posted on social media that, Aaron Delmar's running and he's back and he's running for governor, and his lieutenant governor is going to be Christy. Her name's Christina McCloy is her name. She's a rock star, and then quickly it was deleted, so that wasn't planned. But that made the rounds. Of course, we've got Joe Severino. I don't know if you saw this, Philippe, but Joe Severino came out and said that called himself a probable leading candidate in the Illinois gubernatorial race in a social media post because the
we live in the same town. I know him pretty well.
238 votes when he ran for Congress last time out of over 300,000 cast. He got 238. So probably not a leading candidate for
I would say about Joe is that he probably won't be insignificant because he's
he'll throw bombs.
He throws bombs. He's got an unorthodox way. Yeah. So I'm not saying he's competitive, but I will say that you probably hear about him a few times.
So I mean, we're seeing this field grow, right? I mean, I know that a few others have talked about potentially looking at it, but we saw more rumors come out this week. Hopefully, we'll see some announcements, maybe some like actual announcements, not Mendrick's Facebook post or Gary Rabine screwing up and letting it slip too early on social media. Like let's see a rollout. Let's see some professional campaigns here. If we're going to take on Pritzker or Stratton or I don't know, whoever it is that's running for governor, I'd like to see a professional operation on the Republican side. So far, we haven't seen that.
So do any of you remember this point, Q1 2021, before the 2022 cycle, who had announced or where we were at? I think, was Bailey the only one up and rolling? Had Jesse Sullivan
was out, Bailey
summer.
was out. Irvin wasn't yet, but there was 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 candidates to my recollection. Like we were well ahead of where we are now. And when I mean announced, they didn't just put up a Facebook post. They had teams in place. They had logos. They had grassroots operations starting to be in place. We're definitely behind this cycle.
Jesse Sullivan's rollout, that video, just yeah.
I know, Philippe, you were involved with that race, man. Jesse, the promise of Jesse in that race, it still keeps me up at night.
He came in second in that race actually. So that was that's quite a run for him, I thought.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we get a better field
back up.
I don't think so.
No.
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him about it, but
hopefully a field comes in, but I think the overall message here is not one of doom and gloom, right? I mean, yes, we've got challenges. We all understand we have challenges, but guess what? We've had those challenges for a long time. So you know what? If you're not going to fight, get the hell out of the way because the rest of us are going to fight for this state. And we're not giving up in March of 2025. All right, let's talk about what's an opportunity for Republicans. So through Empower to Win, a subscription platform that Core Strategies has for our clients, we do a quarterly poll. And on this podcast, we will often give you all, our viewers and our listeners, a free look at that poll, at to what is resonating with Illinois voters right now. And so we're going to do that again. We just did our Q1 poll of the state of Illinois. And so we're going to bring up some of these results on screen. Our guests have all been given advanced copies this time around so they can see what we're about to talk about. There's a few key things I want to cover in this poll, and we'll do them one by one. So let me start with this and then open it up for everybody's thoughts. The first thing we saw in this poll was we asked people which of these 12 issues are most important to you right now. Lane's going to bring it up on screen and post so you can see it if you're a viewer. If you're listening on Spotify, maybe jump over to YouTube to check this out. But what you're going to see in those poll results is something pretty clear. You see, if you add up the cost of living and economic issues, they reach 50% for the first time since we've been doing this poll for over now a year and a quarter. So the economy is number one. It's now tied with inflation, both at 16%. Healthcare is fourth at 12%. Taxes is seventh at 55%. All that adds up to 50%. Half of the voters are choosing some issue tied to cost of living or the economy. There's some other issues in there. Threats to democracy remains something that pops really well, especially with seniors and liberals. You see immigration popping pretty well. That tends to pop mostly with conservatives, not as well with most other demographics. And you see, crime's kind of down there at just 6%. You see abortion is just 4%. A lot of those hot button social issues just aren't the main concern for voters. Right now, it's cost of living, it's economic, it's pocketbook issues. What are you guys seeing in this that stands out to you?
Well, I know we've talked about it in previous episodes that, Illinois has really lagged behind our neighboring states and the country as a whole on these economic issues. When you talk about cost of living, we pay the highest overall tax burden in the nation. We're behind on unemployment, right? We haven't even recovered the jobs that we lost as a result of COVID. And that's been 5 years now since the start of COVID, right? A lot of these other states, Indiana, Missouri, Wisconsin, Ohio, Iowa, they're all doing significantly better than us. And that's a direct result of the policies that JB Pritzker and the Democrats have put into place. And every time you open up capbacks or go to ILGA, you see another bill that is just going to make it worse.
Well, yeah, I mean, we see it over and over. All these bills, even the little bills, like, hey, let's make sure health insurance companies cover vitamins. And it's like, okay, it sounds good, but that's middle class families paying more for their insurance to cover that. Over and over, these bills are going to, oh, it's just going to raise utility rates a little bit. It's just going to raise your health insurance a little bit. And over and over, we see this by Democrats down in Springfield. Meanwhile, great bills like Erica's bills to lower property taxes don't ever see the light of day. It's the Republicans are fighting to lower the cost of living for working families, while Democrats are actively raising those costs.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to tell what issues are going to stay too, because so much is changing and it's such a dynamic environment. Like for our business, we're importers as well as manufacturers, and everything we've got on the water now is exempt from the tariff. So we're not quite sure how it's going to affect us yet. But the OEMs we work with, like the John Deeres, the Caterpillars, the Volvos of the world, they're all nervous. They're all kind of scrambling, and they're trying to leave as much on their schedules open so that they can adapt as it unfolds. But I will say among peers in the industry, that being small businesses and domestic manufacturers, there is an excitement. So I do think, in 6, 10, whenever this kind of phase of uneasiness settles down, I do think there's going to be an economic boom. But will it be in time for an election? Will it be in time for a midterm is the big question.
Well, when we get to the news you can use, we're absolutely going to talk about that, Matt. So you're right. There's some cautionary tales here for Republicans on if we don't get this right. I mean, listen, voters put us in power in DC for the economy, for cost of living. That's what they put us in power for. If we screw that up, they're going to run us out of town. So we absolutely have to get this right. When I talk about these economic issues, these cost of living issues, pocketbook issues, pick your term. I don't particularly care. It's rare to find issues that play across the board. But when you look at those issues, remember I said they added up to 50%. Even with females and Democrats, it was 47% of them that chose those issues as their top issues. But it gets even more when you look at young voters. It was 59% of them. Middle-aged voters, 56. Hispanics, 53. Blacks, 57. Asians, 72. Moderates, 58. Independents, 57. I mean, economic issues, again, cost of living, pocketbook, pick your term that you want to use. Those are the issues that are popping, not just with conservatives and Republicans. It's across the board.
Hey, Collin, one thing you said kind of got me thinking, and I share a thought. My group, Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse, we were really focusing in on the out of control tort system here in Illinois. But one of the things that we've done recently is we hired an economist to estimate what is the tort tax. Like, what is the Illinois' poor legislative record on civil justice? How much does it cost each individual person? And, so we've got that. We've tried to push that out best that we can. But I was thinking like that might be something that would be interesting for the Republican caucus in Springfield to do, is to try to put price tags to the consumer on some of these bills, just like Collin was talking about. Like, how much will the vitamin health insurance bill, how much will that actually cost me as a citizen of Illinois? How much is it going to cost? It might cost me, $7 a year or 17 or 70. I don't know. But like, if you start kind of adding up all of those bills, the Republican caucus or whoever's not supporting those bills can have a nice, strong talking point to say, hey, listen, this is what you guys are doing to us.
But I think, Philippe, the solution would be to combine them all. Like maybe have a tracker. Like we've got that Doge tracker and have a tracker on, hey, listen, all the bills we see Democrats put forward, we've had an economist or whoever add it up, and it's going to cost the average working family in the state X. Because I think the vitamin bill is probably going to be like 30 cents. Like I think each individual bill is tiny. And so you're going to get that, it's just 30 cents or whatever it might be. But like if you could add all those numbers up, you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands now to the cost for the average working family in the state. So I think there's something there. I mean, it would cost some money. You'd have to hire some people who would just focus on this. But I think think a number like that could be pretty powerful.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be cool.
I like that idea.
Well, and I saw a clip from CNN today where they were talking about some of the national polling, and there's a new poll out from NBC News that says 44% of Americans believe that the United States is on the right track. And the guy on CNN, their analyst that does all the poll work, he said that that's the highest rating that we've seen since 2004. So people are, a significant segment of the population is happy with the direction that the Trump administration is taking us. I mean, 44%, that's a good number, especially for somebody that can be as divisive as Trump is. The question is, can they continue to deliver on some of these promises, especially on the economic stuff? Because it's kind of there's been some turbulence there, but we have seen some good numbers on gas prices and some other things where it seems like things are kind of starting to.
Eggs are finally coming down, but let's not get too lost in national. I want to stay focused on Illinois. This is a poll of Illinois voters, so let's try to stay focused here.
I actually filed a bill this year, it was Senate Bill 2094, and it just said that a fiscal note was going to be required if legislation were to cost money. And unfortunately, it was not assigned to a committee, but it seems like a great idea to me. It kind of spawned from last year. I was sitting in a committee and we were discussing a bill, and the senator that was presenting it, I asked, do you know how much this is going to cost? And he said, no. And I said, okay, how about just maybe in your own district? Do you have any kind of dollar amount? No. So it just seemed like something that would be common sense. So I filed that this year, but it currently sits in assignments.
Well, and I think that's something Republicans have to get better about, which is we can fight on that. For too long, we've if the Democrat didn't actually vote on a bill, we can't talk about it. It's like, no. The Democratic Party, Democratic leadership killed that bill. They would not let that bill ever see the light of day, which means we should hold all Democrats responsible for it. They voted for that leadership. And so all Democrats should be held responsible for the fact that they wouldn't even let a bill come to the floor, be considered, that would identify what the fiscal impact is for working families when they pass these bills. I mean, that's the kind of thing we just got to get more as a party, more willing to fight on things like that and to point things like that out. I think we've sort of, we sort of have followed the old school way 20 years ago of, we won't hit you for stuff like that. You don't hit us for stuff like this. Democrats have made it clear. This is war to them. And I think it's about time, we start, punching back here on stuff like that. If they won't even consider the fiscal impact for working families, then they don't get to go put out millions of dollars of TV ads pretending like they care about working families next year. Let's look at some other things in this poll that are hitting and that are popping. So let's go to the next one, which is the direction of Illinois. Michael kind of mentioned that people are feeling a little bit better about the direction of the nation. In this poll, we are seeing that voters are a little bit more pessimistic about where the state is headed. You'll see that 35% say we're headed in the right direction, 39% say we're on the wrong track. That's actually a net rating of -3. I know it looks like it's -4, but because of rounding, it's actually -3, trust me. But we're seeing that pessimism kind of across the board, including with independents. Independents are -18, not just -3, where they feel like the state is headed in the wrong direction. And so that is a pretty clear sign. And these numbers have been getting worse ever since the last election. So this is not a good trend for Pritzker. It's not a good trend for Illinois Democrats. And based on what we're seeing, I'm going to imagine that when we report on next quarter's numbers, it's going to be going down even more. All right. Any thoughts on that, or are the numbers pretty clear, speak for themselves?
I think they speak for themselves.
I mean, interesting thing, we've got a client who does a poll, and they don't publicize it, so I can't give the details. But for years, they've been doing this poll in Illinois, and they test how do people feel about the national economy versus the state's economy, and how do they feel about the national mood versus the state's mood. And every time, even during the Biden administration, it was like, okay, we're not happy, but we still feel pretty confident. And then Illinois, not confident at all. And then those numbers have been going up now nationally. Still in Illinois, they've cratered. We don't feel confident at all. That's how people feel about the economy in this state specifically, and rightfully so.
I mean, I almost feel like some of our media needs to be just showing equivalent, Iowa versus Illinois versus Indiana, and showing some of these statistics. And just because if you live in a town like Melin and you can drive across the river to Iowa, you do. And everyone else does too. I think it's, hard to realize that. But you drive across the river and you're like, whoa. I mean, it looks like a different society almost.
I mean,
It's so much more.
that's something that I've been thinking about too. And I think in some of these districts and these counties where, you're right up against a border of another state, like that's messaging that works. You can't use that messaging in Springfield. People in Springfield aren't driving, 2 hours to Missouri to get gas or 2 hours to Indiana, right? But people in St. Louis, like in Madison County and St. Clair, we're driving over to Missouri to get gas and all sorts of things because it's significantly cheaper. And we all know on this podcast whose fault that is.
Well, you talk about cheaper. Let's talk about the next thing here. Lane will bring this up on screen, the cost of living. So we ask people, can you afford to live here or is it too expensive? And this is the lowest number we've seen since we've been doing this poll in the last 5 quarters we've done this. Only 20% say that it's affordable to live in this state, with only 5% saying it's very affordable. This is a net negative 34% that we're seeing. And everybody agrees across the board. This is not a partisan thing when you ask, is it affordable to live here or not? We're talking males and females, young people, middle-aged people, seniors, every demographic with a racial demographic, especially Hispanics at negative 51. That's the highest number that I see here. Even liberals at negative 28, even Democrats at negative 21. They all agree this state is too expensive. So you talk about those issues that could carry across partisan lines. This is absolutely one of them. Even liberals and Democrats say by a significant margin that it is way too expensive in the state of Illinois.
And that a lot of that has to do with our school boards. It's 75% of our tax bill. Our taxes are ridiculous, and a lot of it's the school boards. And a lot of people aren't going to vote in this election specifically, that this is the one that they should be, because this one affects our pocketbook the most.
Yeah. Well, what's the school district? It's it's not by you, but it's fairly close. There's a school district that just gave their superintendent a double bump from $450,000 a year to $510,000 a year for a district where 7% of the kids, I think it is, are proficient in math, and it's like 18% are proficient in English, and he's making over $500,000. And by the way, getting the pension because he's about to retire, he's going to get the pension that goes with that. And those districts don't care because it's the state taxpayers that pay those pensions. That's going to be one hefty pension once that dude retires, and we're all going to pay it.
Yep.
Yeah. And we struggle with our superintendents living on the other side of the river and spending their tax dollars in these other states.
And listen, as I've said plenty of times, there are good districts, there are good superintendents, and like anything, there are bad ones. But the problem is that people just don't tend to pay attention. And so there's not people out there holding their school districts accountable. If you're not in the news like Deerfield or one of these others, it's rare to see more than 1 or 2 or 3 people show up to a school board meeting. And as you said, Christina, that's roughly about 70% of your tax bill, depending on where you live. All right, let's go to our last one here that we're going to talk about. This one just, I always hate bringing this up because too often people like to talk about out-migration as an issue, and we've tested it. It just isn't persuasive, sadly, but it is reality, and so we do need to talk about it. Yet again, in our poll, we've seen that more of our residents want to leave Illinois than stay, and we've got a polling company that does polls across the country. I'm telling you, we don't see this in other states. We don't see this. We see this in most of California, a little bit in some pockets in the Northeast. It's the worst in Illinois of any of the states we see. Only 45% of our residents say that they want to stay. 51% say that they're likely to move to another state at some point. That's crazy. That means more than 1 out of every 2 people you walk past down the street is saying they are likely, not even just that they want to leave, but they're likely to leave at some point. And it's this, you look at some of the demographics where it's the worst. Among Black residents in this state, it's negative 24. So it's a negative 6, the number I just gave you. 45 want to stay, 51 want to go. Among Black people, it's negative 24. That's how many people want to go. Amongst moderates, it's negative 12. Amongst independents, it's negative 14. The only demographics that want to stay are liberals, Democrats, and seniors. They're the only ones that were positive on this number who said they wanted to stay. Everybody else said, yep, we want to get the hell out of here.
Well, with seniors, a lot of it's because we don't tax retirement income. So it's like it makes sense for them to, stay here. But I know that, our state treasurer and others have alluded to like that being an option. So if they go that direction, we could see seniors in the same boat as everybody else, trying
Well,
to
and
get
let's be
out.
real. I mean, we don't have time today on the podcast today, but we do need to talk soon about seniors. Republicans are doing really badly with seniors. I mean, we see some of these old school operatives who are just so used to winning seniors because we used to win seniors all the time that they would just say, oh, let's send out a mailer and drive seniors to the polls because they're going to vote for us. Every poll I've seen now for 3 or 4 years says Republicans are losing seniors right now. And you see these issues. Threats to democracy works best with seniors. I mean, it's just the narrative right now, this sort of scaring people narrative that the left is liking to is using is working most with seniors than anybody else. And so there are bigger problems, I think, than even just the tax burden with seniors, Michael, that we've got a challenge there. But overall, I think you're looking at these numbers and you're saying when your populace is that willing to leave, when over half of the people of the state say, yeah, I want to get the hell out, that's not a good sign.
I think seniors are the only people who are still participating in the legacy media and consuming that for their.
There's also that too.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, there's also that too. All right, let's move on to our next topic. Appreciate you guys running with us on that. We got some good poll results there. We've got 3 topics here that our guests specifically wanted to bring up, and they're all good ones. And so I want to start with you, Senator Harris. I know you've been talking about some of the bills that you've been trying to bring forward. You're also watching some of the crazy bills that the left has brought forward. We also saw Jeff Kiker get caught off at the mic this week while trying to speak. There seems to be a lack of decorum right now, and certainly a lack of willingness by Democrats to let Republicans have any kind of seat at the table, whether it's with the budget or passing any bills that might help the working families of the state lower their cost of living. Just doesn't seem like there's any interest in bipartisanship by Democrats down in Springfield. Am I crazy?
Wow, you have a lot of questions within that one question.
Sorry. And I know you got to work down there, so I don't want to put you too much on the spot because you're hoping Democrats will actually finally work with you. But I know it's got to be frustrating.
So the House and the Senate do have different rules, as you know. The Senate tends to have a little more decorum than the House. The House, I think, typically their microphones are on. That is not the case for the Senate, and so we tend to stick a little bit more to debating the topics. I do feel fortunate this year. I actually have 2 bills that are on 3rd reading, so there's that. But I have filed 6 of them based kind of on topically with tax incentives or help for seniors. And those are, some of them have been extended, but I am still really, really pushing to try and get those moved. I had a bill last year that I've refiled this year that to me just speaks common sense that I kind of, as you alluded to before, they're being held, but why? And that is a bill that would just require if a pornography site is opened on the internet, that our minors would have to do an age verification. And so to me, that is very common sense. It's happening in many other states. That bill has failed to be posted for even a subject matter hearing. So that's something that has been disappointing. And then I have another bill. We had down here in the Metro East a K-9 officer who was killed in the line of duty and protected his human officer this last year. And so I filed a bill so that the punishment behind that would move to a Class 2. And that is a bill that I think has been very popular among legislators. There's been a lot of verbal support for it, but that's another one that I've been disappointed hasn't moved so far. So, I mean, I'm a realist. There are 19 Republican senators out of 59. So control what we can, work within the rules that are set before us. For me, it's been, I can control what we're doing with constituents. So when constituents call us, that's where I say, you know what, this we have a whole lot of control over. And so, the rest can get frustrating at times, but it is what it is. We'll operate in a realistic standpoint and let's not waste time. So let's just show up for our constituents and try and help them when they are calling and say, I don't know who to call with this. Government's so big. People are frustrated. They don't know who to turn to for help. Some of them are calling us about neighborhood issues or, community issues or federal issues. And so we're able to really, through our connections, I think, help guide them. And that's an area we can have massive control over. And I think that, kind of we can have good control over it. And so let's be amazing at it kind of has been our goal. Of course, I'm still working very hard on the legislative part and have had a lot of successes there too. Some disappointments, of course, but let's, what we can control, let's control and let's show people in our community that we're here for you and we're showing up every single day and we're going to make your life better.
Well, I mean, that positivity shows just why you're my favorite and everybody's favorite down there. I mean, I think, listen, I get it. Like you're trying to work with whoever you can, and certainly you want to see your bills called. And I would say my plea to Springfield Democrats is, I know we've got some bomb throwers on your side that you don't want to work with. Fine, I'll concede that, but that's not people like Senator Erica Harris or Sue Rezin, and or some of the others who are trying to push forward common sense bills, like we've talked about, and even some of those bomb throwers. We've talked about Jed Davis and some of his common sense bills. Like, yeah, okay, fine. You pick a list of people you just aren't going to move their bills. I hate it. It's not democracy, but whatever. But you know what? When we've got good people who are trying to do the right thing and bills that we can all agree would make people's lives better, can we ignore the R or the D and just let those bills get a vote and get a debate on the House floor or the Senate floor? I mean, I think that's a common decency thing to do, but we just don't seem to see that happening.
Well, and super just factually speaking, right? Who has the Supreme Court, who has the governorship, who has every statewide office, who has both houses, right? Not the Republicans. So if you want to see change, there's an opportunity. I think that's another message to voters.
Yeah, I mean, if you're frustrated these bills aren't seeing the light of day, then get out there and fight for it. I mean, we talk about if you want to change the laws, you got to be in power. So I think your point is, let's go win some elections so we can change the laws. In the meantime, I know it's just frustrating we've got some really good legislators in both caucuses who are trying to push forward common sense legislation. We've covered a lot of them. I only mentioned a few names here, but we've given kudos over the last several months on some great bills that Republicans in both the House and the Senate have pushed forward. I've got a few more we'll talk about today. That's why I mentioned Sue Rezin and Kiker, because we're going to talk about nuclear energy a little bit here. And there's some common sense bills here that the left should get on board with because it would help the environment. It would create jobs. These are common sense bipartisan bills. And yet we never seem to be able to push them forward. So come on, let's work together. Let's make people's lives better. That's what I'm hoping for. All right, let's go to our next topic here. Philippe, I mentioned, I'm glad to have you here because I know you're fighting against lawsuit abuse. It's not something that a lot of people talk about, but I'm really glad you're here to talk about it because in a state like Illinois, the Illinois trial lawyers have tremendous power. We talked about a few weeks ago about a common sense bill that was brought forward to help something we all agree, Democrats and Republicans agree, is a potential problem that's looming in the state. But then it went nowhere because the trial lawyers came in and said, nope, and then it was killed immediately. They have a ridiculous amount of power down in Springfield. I know you're fighting that fight. Give us some of the bills you guys are looking at and some of the things you're looking to either push forward or kill.
Yeah, I was going to talk more about the legislation maybe at the back end of the thing. Okay. Maybe if you don't mind, I could talk about kind of the theme of what you were talking about. I think a lot of people don't understand, in Springfield, it's institutionally set up. Like I think Dan Proff used to talk about it. It's not broken, it's fixed. It's a little bit like that, And so I wanted to go there and look at like the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association, who it seemed to have tremendous influence in Springfield, and just kind of try to explain, understand why they do. Is it the strength of their arguments? Are they so compelling, and making the case on behalf of their constituents that certain bills need to pass, or is there something else going on? So I went to Illinois Sunshine and did some kind of deep dive into the donation habits of the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association, and I looked at them at the last session, and they donated about $1 million to candidate committees or party organizations. 100% of those went to Democrats. I don't know, that may surprise you or maybe not. I don't know. But, and the lion's share, kind of see how they make their donation structure, really goes to it's really disproportionately to the leadership, and then a little crumbs to everybody. Everybody else gets a little crumb, and then the leadership does it. So I think it's kind of helps us understand. Maybe you say this is a pretty sophisticated listening group that you have, so maybe people understand this, but I think not everybody kind of understands how it actually works. And so we put out a report called the Follow the Money Report, just to track and see what it is about, the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association. And so, yeah, they're donating big dollars. And so their influence in Springfield, I don't think is based on, we're doing what's best for little people, the common man, the working family, the small business person. They try to characterize their arguments that way. So when they put out press releases and different sort of things, it's always based like they're doing it for people. But I think that the amount of money that they're putting into the politics really shows that they have something in for it. And if you think about it, $1 million investment in political organizations in Springfield pays off handsomely when you're getting 20, 60, 40% attorney fee deals on major BIPO settlements and various things like that. So another one too, and I'll finish up here because I know we're doing rapid fire, but interesting. We talked a little bit about the Illinois Supreme Court, and the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association donated $200,000 in 2022 to the All for Justice PAC, which was there to elect primarily Elizabeth Roquefort, who the first decision when she won the Supreme Court, a heated Supreme Court race, the first decision she wrote was the White Castle case, which unnecessarily interpreted totally crazily the BIPA, Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act. Some of you guys know what that is, but she wrote a thing that totally expanded that thing, and that literally costs Illinois businesses and employers tens of millions of dollars across Illinois because of that thing. They ultimately have reformed that bill after all the blood of the turnip was squeezed out, but the money is a really pernicious. The Illinois Trial Lawyers Association are really powerful and really pernicious. And, I think if we were to do that across a lot of different major groups, who are involved in Springfield, we would see that almost all that money is going to the Democratic Party, and all of vast majority is going into a handful of legislators who are in the leadership positions, and they're really dictating the thing. And I wonder how much, Senator Harris, you say, hey, you're frustrated with some of your legislation is not getting through. I suspect, and maybe you guys would know better, but I suspect that even a lot of Democrat legislatures probably feel the same way, that they're not really listened to because all the money and all the power is going to the top. And I think that's where a lot of the policy is coming from. I might be wrong about that,
but to your point, Phil, you look at like where this money's going and what they're getting for it. That's $1 million investment. But how much money are they making on some of these bills that have passed or haven't passed? You already brought up BIPA. They made millions of dollars off of BIPA. You look at some of these other bills. I know you did some work on this with Mark Lennon and Wire Points. I'm just looking at this article and just looking at like some of these bills that were passed to raise interest fees so they could make more money on judgments, to be able to sue Uber and Lyft to make money off of them, to allow additional damages in wrongful death cases. And then as what we're seeing, all these bills filed this session, where there's all sorts of bills to make sure that attorneys can sue for whatever they want in this state. And they know this is how it's set up. They know it's too expensive to fight. And so the whole goal is give us a chance to sue so they'll settle. So we can make money off of settlements. That's the whole structure here, because it costs more for most of these lawsuits, because in Illinois, you get dragged into court. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. It will cost you more to fight it in court than it will just give them a few bucks to make them go away. And that's what this whole structure is set up for.
Any wonder that I don't know if you polled employers or people who are running businesses, but I'm sure that they're off the charts on looking to find another place to run their businesses. And sadly that affects all of us in terms of jobs, in terms of our local governments when they have less money, which is driving more debt. So the productive class, the people who are actually building wealth and trying to build a middle class society here in Illinois that's strong, working class, is just constantly being looted, whether it be by your property taxes or it be the threat of some, lawsuit complaint that shows up on your desk one day for some ridiculous statutory oversight. So it's really a problem. I know not a lot of people think about it because I think maybe it's a little bit attenuated. But like I said, I was referring to earlier, our economists said, they estimated about $2,000 per person is what we're paying in because of Illinois' bad civil justice thing. So there's a real cost there to all of us. And, appreciate the legislators in Springfield who are out there working on trying to, raise this in Springfield. And we're trying to do that here in the grassroots to everybody else. So appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Well, I'm glad you're fighting, and I think more people need to pay attention. So what's your website's CALA.com/Illinois, right?
Yep, exactly. Right. Reach out to us. We send out emails periodically and stuff, so can keep you updated on all the updates.
And this is sometimes on this podcast we bring up some of the things that are less sexy that people are like, well, come on, just move to the sexy topics, the drama and whatever else, and we do that too. But these are the things that are hitting your pocketbook, as Philippe just said. I mean, that's.
Well, I can put on makeup next time I come on, Collin, if you want sexier.
I don't think you or I could ever pull that off. So, all right. Well, let's move to our news you can use, our quick hits section. We don't have as much this week, mostly because, oh, I'm sorry, hold on. I'm screwing this up. I skipped past something that I really wanted to talk about. Christina, I think this is partially because I had this in my Clowns of the Week section, but since you're with us, we're going to cover it as a whole topic because it is a Clown of the Week thing, but we got to talk about it.
100%.
So we got to talk about the Will County board member, Jacqueline Trainier, who basically ran over a kid on a bicycle and drove away and fled the scene. I kid you not. This is for real. This is a Will County board member. Her explanation is, well, the light turned green. The kid was going across the street on their way to school. I pulled forward. Then they were on the ground. I made sure they were okay, and I drove away. I kid you not. That is actually her explanation here.
No charges.
Yeah. So what the heck is going on here, Christina? And I know this is not the first ridiculous thing we've seen from this Will County board member.
Yes. Yeah, she allegedly she hit a kid and just kept going. She did, I guess she did check to see if the kid was okay, but the bike was broken and she left. She left anyway. It just shows Democrats really don't care about kids, you know. They really don't.
Didn't she try to claim that, like, I don't know if I hit him, and then the cops went out and looked at her car? We can,
yes,
I'll send you the photo to bring up. There's a dent and a
dented.
scratch right in the front of the car. Like, I don't know if I hit him. Like, it is unbelievable.
You can't even make this stuff up, you know. And I guess she got a ticket for failure to yield at a crosswalk. Like, that's it. That's
Run over a
like,
kid
really,
on a bicycle on his way to school. Yeah,
was she on her phone? Was she texting? What, you know, nobody's asking these questions.
Yeah,
so
and this is just for those who maybe don't know. If you're kind of recognizing that name, this is the same Will County board member who hacked the emails of a fellow Will County board member and forwarded those emails around. Like, this is not somebody who cares about what's legal and what's not legal.
Right. And that nothing was done then. I mean, she literally hacked into other county board members and she blew it off and made it like, well, you could FOIA for this information. Well, you could, but you have to retract some information should be retracted. So it's, yeah, clown, major clown. She's up for election in 26. Let's make sure we get her out. So
yeah, I think we could all agree. I think we could rally statewide people around knocking her out in 2026. Yeah. I mean, we're going to start our Clown of the Week section in just a minute, and I think she just automatically wins. So everyone else is fighting for second place.
Yes.
All right, we'll do our quick hits really quickly here so we don't go too far over time today. We've only got 3, so we don't have to go through them for too long. But I want to bring up, Lane will show this up on screen, but I saw something this week about the top marginal tax rate throughout the country. And if you look at the map of the country, you see Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota are all in red because they went up. Meanwhile, the rest of the Midwest went down. You see West Coast and Northeast are all red and went up. Everywhere else is green or gray meaning they don't even have an income tax. So if you look, this is pretty much a pretty clear sign of blue states and red states. But you see yet again, Illinois doesn't have a lot of company here when it comes to our taxes. Wisconsin has gone up. Minnesota has gone up in this category. Not as much as Illinois, but they've gone up in this category. Everyone else. Iowa has gone down the most of anyone in the whole country. Missouri's down. Indiana's down. Michigan's down. Ohio, Kentucky. You go further south, they've all gone down. I mean, this is pretty clear yet again that Illinois is an outlier. This is since 2000, comparing that top income tax rate. So you wonder why we're losing revenue. Democrats and some of these left of center civic organizations like to use that term revenue. So I'll use it too. We are losing tremendous amounts of revenue as these high income earners are taking their money and they're going to Texas or to Florida or any of these other states instead of staying here. And that is making the amount of the tax burden that working families have to pick up go up every time one of them leaves. Pritzker likes to laugh about how, you know, his nemesis moved down to Florida, but how much more in taxes are the rest of us paying because we drove Ken Griffin out of Chicago or any of the rest of these? I talked about Gary Rabine moving to Florida and all the others that have moved to Florida. All the rest of us are picking up more as a higher percentage of the share of the tax burden because of it. And here you see visually what's happening around the country, and Illinois is in pretty bad company as you look at it. Any quick thoughts, or did that cover it? I think that covered it pretty well. All right, let's go to the next one. So this is interesting. In Kane County, they're running a potential sales tax increase countywide. And one of the main things that is being run to cover is the state's attorney's office. The Kane County state's attorney has come out to say, this is Jamie Mosser, who's come out to say that their costs have gone up. And as a result, they're going to need more money because of the Safety Act. It's increased costs. And this is not something we've seen talked about a lot. But with the Safety Act, you always hear the safety aspects of it and the crime aspects of it, which is certainly valid. But what we don't hear a lot is the fact that this is increasing costs for state's attorney's offices, which in turn is increasing costs on your county taxes, which is raising the cost of living for working families. And so, yes, there of course is a safety and crime aspect to that bill, but there's also yet again an instance where Springfield Democrats are raising your cost of living. Here's yet another example of that. Philippe, I know you're in Lake County. I know you were really involved trying to knock off the Kim Fox acolyte up there in Lake County. I mean, this is, again, raising costs and raising the costs for working families.
Well, there's also a lot of foregone money in terms of bond. They got rid of the bail, and that's actually creating massive holes in state's attorney's offices across the state too now, because they used to use that money for to fund their offices and no longer have it.
So. Sure. Well,
so now just passing on to the taxpayers. Yeah,
and I want to point out Jamie Mosser, she's a Democrat, not a Republican. So before you say that's just a Republican trying to attack the Safety Act, that's not what that is. All right, last one here. And Matt brought this up, and so I'd be curious his thoughts or somebody else's. I also, in this section, want to make sure we're aware of some things that could be problematic for us. And we need to be careful, Republicans. You see voters, you see manufacturers, you see businesses not super happy over the tariff situation. The Technology Manufacturing Association surveyed their members this past week and found a lot of frustration over the tariff situation, the uncertainty. Of the people that responded, their manufacturers who responded, 62% said that this uncertainty around tariffs has negatively impacted their business. Only 13% said positively, and 25% said it had no impact at all. And let me be clear, as TMA has done surveys like this over the years, their members actually previously were pretty favorable towards tariffs. So this is not an anti-tariff group that is saying this, and their members tend to be pretty favorable to Trump. And so this is not something that's coming out where this is an anti-Trump group or an anti-tariff group. And this is the caution to DC, to Trump, and just to Republicans on this topic. It isn't necessarily the tariffs that people are against, though in some cases they are. It's the uncertainty. It's this idea that Trump could wake up one morning and just decide to put a 25% tariff on I don't know what. And that's what seems to be happening here. And that uncertainty is causing a lot of problems for businesses, especially importers and manufacturers. And again, as I said before, we were elected. Republicans were given the power of the reins in DC because of the economy and because of inflation and the cost of living. If we do that poorly, if we don't handle it poorly, we are going to be run out of town. And you see this uncertainty on tariffs is not playing super well for us.
Well, right off the bat, I think, you have to give some grace. Obviously, the electorate will not, but like I, as a manufacturer, am giving Trump grace because I can't imagine negotiating something like that while also telling the public what I'm negotiating for. So I do think some of the bluster and the, over and under is the negotiation process. He can't say exactly what he's looking for as he goes out to put a tariff on another nation. But I'd say at the end of the day, like a very core thing. I mean, you're giving me a funny face, but it is a negotiation.
No, I'm
right?
smiling at my kid.
Okay,
He's looking through the window at me, distracting.
I'd say, but the other thing too is like, yeah, it might be a hard pill to swallow as we adjust, but we really need to. So much of what I do, I could do domestically, but it's just so much more expensive now. It's going to give us a chance to compete, but it's going to take a long time for the economy to ramp up.
Where's the narrative on that, Matt? Because you already said, like, this doesn't work with the electorate. It works with us. Okay, great. Yeah. But we're on this podcast to talk about the electorate.
The narrative. I think the thing here is like, have faith because we still have these calendar months left on the books and it is still early. And it's, the greatest thing I think is that he is moving quickly, because if this started next year at this time, boy, would I be nervous, right? At least we're getting right into what might be a complicated and painful process. So I am glad we're getting into it right away, but I do think for the well-being of the nation, I have no doubt we have to ship things back on shore.
And we've had some great people on this podcast who've talked about the value and the benefits of tariffs. But again, we're a political group, and I think you talk about that message is not getting to the voters. And when you see a group like this, like TMA, where their manufacturers are reflexively pro the agenda and pro what Trump is trying to do, as you said, and even they say that this is negatively impacting them. That's got to scare you a bit. I mean, again, I get what you're saying. 2026 is far away off, but this cake gets baked early sometimes. And if people are feeling like this isn't working, sometimes it can get away from you. The train leaves the station. I think my message overall, the point of bringing this up is for Republicans is we do have a potential problem here, and you got to make sure you got a good message. And Matt, your message is a good one. Let's get that to Republicans then, because this is not an issue we're winning on with voters, and we can't let that stand. All right, let's go to our final segment. Let's have some fun. We've had some heady topics. We've talked policy a lot this week. So let's have some fun. Our OG Clown of the Week segment. Everybody here on the panel gets a chance to nominate as many as you wish in either category. OG, if you want to give some praise to somebody. Clown of the Week, though, as we talked about, Christina's already won that in her district with Trainier, has already won Clown of the Week. But maybe you've got someone who could fight for second. What do you guys got?
Well, Clown of the Week, I gotta say JB Pritzker won for his comments at that fundraiser in California where he said we need to punch Trump in the face and all of this violent rhetoric. But also he issued a statement criticizing Trump's use of executive orders and said we will not live by decree. And then you go to his official website and look through all the executive orders that he's issued during his administration. That's pot calling the kettle black right there.
Well, and that wasn't the only time Pritzker was a hypocrite this week. He also was a hypocrite on government cuts specifically to healthcare, because when the rumors, which have not in any way been proven, but whatever, the rumors that there are going to be Medicaid cuts in the Republican budget have been out. Pritzker literally said this. I'm going to read the quote. I believe that blood will be on their hands. People will lose their lives as a result of what they're trying to do right now. And yet, on the flip side, Pritzker is literally making the same style cuts to healthcare for non-citizens. And so, again, this is something where we Republicans have said, hey, let's stop wasting our tax dollars on healthcare for non-citizens. So we agree with the need for cuts in this space. But Pritzker, the hypocrite, is attacking Trump and Republicans for cutting because we can't afford it and saying there's blood on their hands. And yet, right away, Pritzker's doing the same thing. And so I think there are some Hispanic leaders, Latino leaders in the state who are saying, well, then isn't there blood on your hands, JB Pritzker? Because the same thing is accurate. So, Pritzker has multiple times this week has spoken out of both sides of his mouth, which is something he likes to do because he never seems to be called out on it by the media. All right, what else you guys got?
I've got a praise.
Nice.
A gentleman reached out to me this week. His name is Whit Kennedy. And he is a reporter for the Chicago City Wire, which is one of those kind of regional newspapers. And he has shared with me a story, and he's done a lot of great reporting on this thing that I think needs to be out. But there seems to be a cottage industry of wrongful conviction suits kind of percolating out of Cook County based on sort of alleged past police abuses, but it's sort of all tied into with kind of like, it seems to be the sort of inside work a little bit with the city attorneys and state's attorney's office, where there's a lot of really easy ways for people to, not be proven innocent or not have to prove their innocence, but kind of getting out and then turning around and finding massive lawsuit judgments coming out. So it's sort of a developing thing. I saw Paul Vallis tweet about it, and then this guy called me up and stuff like that. So I just want to say, that there's this guy's what you would characterize, I think, as a citizen journalist who's really uncovered up, I think, could turn out to be a major scandal that I'm sure, Smoke-Filled Room will probably be talking about if true in future episodes. So good job to Whit Kennedy at the Chicago City Wire.
I like it. We'll keep an eye on it. Thanks, Phil.
Yep, you bet.
Anybody else got anything to add? I got a number of clowns and some praise to give this week too. But anybody else have anything? I'd like to let the panel go first.
I'm going to say some more clowns are the administration at the Deerfield school for everything that happened to those young girls and being forced to change in front of a boy. That was, and they are heroes, I think, because they stood up for themselves, and to put that on 13-year-old girls is a lot. So
And I think the interesting thing I'm seeing is there was a survey that came out just today, Thursday, as we record this, that said 2/3 of Deerfield residents aren't in support of that. And I mean, Deerfield is not a socially conservative community, so
Right.
I think that's pretty telling.
Yeah.
School board meeting on April 10th in Deerfield. I happen
Good
to
to
know.
know.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, our fight doesn't stop on April 1st, y'all. We got
Nope.
months and months to go here.
Yeah.
All right. I'll give some while you guys are, if you're thinking or maybe not thinking, I'll give some of mine here just to keep us moving. So first, I already kind of mentioned it, but I want to give kudos to some Republicans in the House and Senate pushing forward a common sense bill, several bills. So the House bill is 3604. The Senate bill is 1527. If you're going to if you want to push in Illinois to have carbon-free power, carbon-free future, however you want to word that, you're not going to get there without nuclear, even though these environmental groups are fighting it tooth and nail. So you've got some Republicans who have, on some bipartisan bills, who are pushing that forward. In the House, I mentioned Kiker, Noreen Hammond, Jason Bunting are co-sponsors. And then the Senate, Sue Rezin and Lee Ariano is on that as well. So kudos to them pushing forward a bipartisan bill to say, hey, listen, we agree we want to take care of our environment and have as clean energy of a future as possible. Nuclear is how we're going to get there. So let's stop playing partisan politics and let's just get this done. So kudos to them. Also to the House Republicans, they continue to roll out common sense legislation, good legislation that's going to make people's lives better. This time it was on reform, ethics reform. So kudos to Patrick Windhorst, Dave Severin, David Freese, who've pushed forward a number of bills focusing on reform and ethics down in Springfield. I doubt they'll see the light of day, but that's not the point. Let's show voters that if we were trusted with the reins of government, how would we lead? And so I love to see this legislation push forward. I think it's a really positive thing. All right, let's go to some negatives here. So yet again, there was another story this week about the billions of dollars of cuts in the federal government and how it's going to just debilitate Illinois. This latest story was federal health programs are going to be facing debilitating cuts from the federal government. When you actually dig down, what's the money for? It's not billions, it's millions. And what's that money for? That money is for COVID. It was all money that was earmarked towards COVID, a pandemic that has been over for a bit now. And yet there was over $100 million earmarked to still be spent in Illinois on COVID. And federal government said, you know what, let's pull that back. We're kind of past this. Let's maybe find other uses for that money. But of course, everybody freaked out. The media freaked out. Pritzker, of course, pushed that forward, that the Republicans, they're taking away your health care and they're removing. It's like, no, that's not in any way what this is. None of this was going towards actual health care and health programs. It was going towards studies and all sorts of things that didn't need to be funded at this time. Next thing here, let's talk about the mayor of Linwood, Illinois. So Jada Curry is the mayor of Linwood, Illinois. When she was trustee back in 2021, there was a vote to cut the mayor's salary from, at the time, $85,000 a year down to $20,000 a year. She was a trustee. She voted against it. She's now the mayor. And CBS has been working to uncover this. Kudos to them, OG to them. They've been working to uncover this, that she's been working to try to overcome that reduction to get the money she thinks she's owed. They found out that in the last year, she made almost $100,000, even though her salary was only $20,000. How did she pull that off? Well, she took an extra $5,000 home for being the cannabis commissioner, another $10,000 for being the liquor commissioner. And then she found a way to get herself paid $2,500 for every meeting she went to in order to pad her salary and make $100,000. This is yet again, yes, she's a Democrat. This is yet again politicians just trying to enrich themselves off our tax dollars and just thinking they deserve our money because they want our money. Let's also talk about DCFS attorney Deborah Riley, who, while she was on the job and being paid by state tax dollars, she was also working at a local bank, getting paid to work at a local bank. So she was double dipping while clearly not actually doing her job in DCFS. And I think we could all agree DCFS has some problems, and you should probably be doing your job focusing on taking care of the most needy and most important are supporting those low-income children who need our help. I bungled the words there. Clearly, this is not my best episode, but you get the point. If you work for DCFS, don't double dip. Don't go work at the bank. Do your damn job and take care of the kids who deserve our attention in this state, because kids are getting sick. Kids are dying on your watch, DCFS. Be better. Next, let's move over to Crystal Lake School District 47. Leah Grover, this was sent to me by a few people from social media, so thank you guys for sending this my way. I did not notice this. There's a candidate for School District 47 who's been endorsed by the McHenry County Democrats and McHenry County Now. She is the author of an op-ed, Mom of Three, Why I'm a Better Parent When I'm Stoned. And she's running for School District 47 to represent the district on the board. Probably isn't going to be the best choice to serve on your school district board. Let's just leave it at that. Only a couple more here. Let's talk about a bill down in Springfield, House Bill 1237, which has made its way to the floor. This would outlaw any Native American names, any Native American logos or mascots. It's very clearly what their position here is, because they're calling them racist logos. And I can understand, I'll be clear, a term like Redskins, I'm sorry, Washington Commanders fans, Redskins can be a bit of a negative connotation towards a Native American. So that one I'm not going to fight for. But they're also outlawing Braves, Chiefs, Chieftains, Tribe, Indians. None of those have negative connotations. And just like the Blackhawks, if you do it right, could be a celebration of the heritage of Native Americans. And yet they just want to outlaw it entirely instead of like maybe just doing it better instead of outlawing it. I'm sure, Michael, this follows right along with you being frustrated with them trying to outlaw your mascot down there, right?
Yeah, well, we got Muscuda Indians, and Granite City has what are the? I think they're the Indians or something along those lines as well. So it's an issue in our area for sure.
Let's talk about down in your region, down by you and Erica. Let's talk about Katie Stewart. Definitely gets a Clown of the Week nomination because not once, but twice she dodged voting on controversial bills. She was subbed out. She's on committee when the controversial bill came up about basically outlawing homeschooling, but regulating homeschooling. They subbed her out so that she didn't have to take a vote on that bill. And then when another bill came out, I can't remember which. Oh, that was the mascot one. They subbed her out again. And so Katie Stewart isn't even willing to take tough votes down in Springfield. I think it's time. What do you think, Michael? I think it's time to get rid of Katie Stewart. If she doesn't even have the guts to vote on controversial legislation, maybe she should let somebody else take the job who would actually represent her constituents.
Yeah, well, you know how she would have voted on those bills. That's why she had to get out of Dodge, I guess, because she wouldn't vote the way her constituents wanted her to.
Erica, it looks like you were going to say something.
Well, I was actually just going to try and look it up. I think she might have been a sponsor on that, but we should double check that on that.
The homeschooling one, I think she was a sponsor.
2827. I just was going to look it up.
It is worth taking a second. I think our viewers and listeners would allow us to take a second here to get that answer, because if she was a sponsor and even still got subbed out and didn't vote for it, that's pretty pathetic. So who can get to it faster? I'm on my computer. I gotta go pull it up. All right, House Bill.
Yeah, she sponsored it.
There you go. Katie Stewart, right there, one of the sponsors. So on her own bill that she sponsored, she didn't have the guts to vote on it in committee. They subbed her out. That is, wow. Wow. All right, that deserves more attention, but I don't think we have the time today. But that definitely gets a front runner status for Clown of the Week right there. Sheesh. All right, my last one for the day is just a comment made by Christina Castro, senator from Elgin, on a bill. I don't care about this bill, Senate Bill 2045. It's about gambling in the state. It's just not one that's on my radar. It certainly would raise revenue for the state and put out some of these fantasy sports companies, put them out of business. So probably I wouldn't support it, but I don't know the bill, so I can't get into it. But my comment is this. In a committee, when this was being fighted, Christina Castro, when pushed on the bill by a local provider of this who said that this would put them out of business and end their Illinois operations. Here's her quote. You want the privilege to do business in Illinois. Guess what? You're going to pay for that privilege. That's her quote. And this is the mentality of Pritzker and a lot of these Democrats in Springfield. If you own a business, Christina, Matthew, I know, Erica, you've been a small business person, an entrepreneur. Phil, I know you've done a lot of work with businesses over the years. I own my small business here. If you do business in this state, you are creating jobs, you are creating wealth, you're creating opportunity, and yet Pritzker and Christina Castro and these Democrats think you should be thankful for the opportunity, the privilege of doing business in Illinois. And when they come to you asking for 40% of your revenues for taxes, or they come to you saying they want you to spend $500,000 on a license fee, you should say, yes, sure. thank you, you're welcome, and bend over and give them even more money. That's their belief. It's not that they're grateful that you're creating jobs. It's that you should be thankful for the privilege to open a business in this state. That honked me off. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but that pissed me off.
No, you're right.
Yeah, it's a bother. It's like the bully beating you up and being like, "You're welcome."
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir. May I have another? All right, that's enough. Let's move on. Final thoughts from everybody. Thank you guys for being with us this week. We'll get your closing thoughts. Since we only have one core team member, Michael, give your thought first, and then we'll give it to the our panelists and our guest to finish us off.
I'll just keep it brief. I was just going to say, rewind to that part where we talked about all the polling data, because there's a lot of interesting stuff there, and it shows us where the opportunities are, over the course of the next year and a half as we get into this 2026 cycle, because April 2nd, 2026 starts.
Yep. Well, you're absolutely right. All right. To our guests again, thanks for being here with us. I don't have a particular order here, but Philippe, why don't you give us your closing thoughts here?
Well, I'll give you guys props, Collin, and you and your crew. I think what you're building here with this podcast is really important, a way for people across the state to keep up and understand what's going on. Because I think so much of the problems of the state are because so much of it happens in the shadows, And so if we can have great representatives and operatives and nonprofit leaders coming together and helping shine a light on it, the more we know, the more we can prepare to change it and make this a better state for everybody.
I appreciate it, Philippe. Well, as I think we've proven by this point, we're almost 100 episodes in. We've had competitors on. We've had people who have spoken ill of my company on. Our only goal is to help Republicans win in this state. It's not about anything other than that. We put a ton of time into putting this together. But again, if we're going to win, we're going to win together. And so that's our goal here. And I'm glad you guys were with us today to try to help us push that forward. Matt, glad you were on with us for the first time. Hopefully not the last time. And your final thoughts for the week.
Yeah, I think seconding that is important. I think it's really key that we build our own media channels here in Illinois. I think it's awesome that you guys are doing what you're doing. I love the format. So thank you for having me on. We need to make Illinois strong again. We need to make it proud again, and we need to make Illinois great again. So thank you for having me on.
If they want to learn more about your PAC or what you guys are doing, is there a website they can go to, or should they just look up "Make Illinois Great Again"?
www.migapac.com, and it's MEGA, MEGA.
There we go. All right.
You can't be an eraser mark from cancellation. So MEGA.
Okay, there you go. Christina, so glad to have you on again. Your final thoughts for the week.
I just want to thank you again for doing this, having us, educating the voters, the public. This is the news now. I agree 100%. This is where people are getting their news. And I think shows like yours is educating people a lot more than the actual news. So thank you again for doing everything you do.
Well, people need to pay attention to Will County. It's one of the few places we've really seen growth. It's down in Eric and Michael's region. It's Will County. There's some places we've done well despite not doing super great in Illinois. Will County is one of those. We can get some wins in 2026. We're just going to need to all rally together to make it happen.
Yep. Thank you.
Senator, thank you so much for taking the time. You get the final word this week.
Oh, wow. Okay. My final word is do not give up on Illinois. We have inherently amazing benefits here that even bad legislation can't necessarily overcome. We're multimodal. We have rail, port, water, air, all the interstates. Of course, we all need to come together like this and communicate what our message is, and that's only going to make us stronger. But I'd say we need to lean into 26 and never give up.
I love it. Well, and I say this all the time. We've had a lot of great elected officials on, including you, Erica. But I say this, no disrespect, but Illinois is great because of our people, not our politicians. And frankly, in spite of most of our politicians. So we can get lost too much in the politics, and that's our job to talk politics. But the reality is the 12 million people of the state is why Illinois is great. And too often our politicians just get in the damn way. So,
well, and it's super easy to complain and it's harder to find solutions. So thanks for this kind of format that allows us to bring some solutions to the table, talk to people, really kind of pass the baton around and come up with some great ideas, because that's how we move forward.
Yeah, totally. Well, we'll be in person in Fulton County this Saturday for their Lincoln Day dinner. So if you're in the area, come support them and come out to their Lincoln Day dinner. And we'll be talking with some local legislators there in this exact same format. And then in a couple of weeks, we will have our 100th episode of SFR. We've been doing this 2 years now. We've got some big plans for our 100th episode. So stay tuned. We're going to have some fun. In the meantime, thank you so much for being with us. Chris, who's not with us, the White Sox, as I'm watching right now on Thursday, they're up 3-0. So maybe we'll actually win a game this year, go 1-151. That's kind of exciting. But don't lose us. Go vote. Make sure you're involved in your local elections come Tuesday. Next week, we'll talk about those local elections, what happened, and we'll preview what's going to come here in the final days of session. So be back with us next week in the smoke-filled room. We'll catch you soon.